on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Listener discretion is advised. The show contains graphic language and depictions of violence. It may not be suitable for all audiences.
We say fuck a lot. Hey guys, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
We meet again.
Oh, we got funny we keep meeting like this.
I feel like a gunfighter who wants to challenge you to a duel or something.
Bring it on, bro.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, let me get my smoke
I'm
wagons.
gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, I can't believe I said smoke wagons the other day. You're like, what's a smoke wagon? It's a damn gun.
I've never heard that before.
Man, watch Tombstone. Skin those smoke wagons and go to work.
That's such a boy movie.
Oh, God, it is.
I'm coming back and bringing hell with me.
You tell them.
Oh, my God.
You tell them I'm coming back and hell's coming with me.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm probably not even saying it right. I'm getting my man card pulled.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Why do men love Kurt Russell?
Well, Kurt's a pretty tough guy.
You think so?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe how tough Kurt is.
My friend told me he learned how to be a man by watching Kurt Russell movies.
I
Now, I have
see
to
that.
say, when he's, what is it, Snake Eyes or whatever, in the Return to L.A. and
Yeah, he's Snake.
Snake.
Yeah.
And what is the other one? Escape from New York, Escape from L.A. Or
Yes.
I don't even know what they're called.
That you're close enough.
Yeah, those were some great 80s movies. Now, I will give
Yeah.
Kurt the high five on those.
They were very great.
Do you have some true crime news for us?
Yes, first off, I think they've made it official. The prosecution has withdrawn its contesting Lori Vallow's competency to stand trial. So now they're going to agree upon further review, agree with the defense's experts' evaluation of Lori to say she's not competent at the moment to stand trial.
So that bitch crazy?
So, but they are going to follow a restorative treatment plan, whatever, and which I think I like to imagine in my head that's where they just take her in a room and slap her around a whole lot.
Waterboard her and
Yeah,
such?
with some like leaded heavy gloves or something.
Some old school, like asylum type of therapy?
Yeah, beat her with a phone book.
Where she's put in a chair and spun around up to, 100 miles per hour until her eyes and ears bleed?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Until she finally screams, "Just try me. I did it."
Okay.
Okay, so I hope that's the restorative plan because that's what she deserves.
She does deserve that.
So there's that, and there's also, interestingly, I heard of this already, but then Jenny in our Discord just posted the article on it. An arrest made in a 1972 killing of a 15-year-old Illinois girl thanks to genetic genealogy.
Wow.
So yes, once again, and I think famously people remember, they caught the Golden State Killer through this. You know, the 23andMe and all the
Ancestry.com
Ancestry.
and such databases.
They're opening those up to investigators in a way, and which gives them a lot bigger pool and a lot more people to compare to. And they have since they caught the Golden State Killer. Me and you talked about how we agree with it. We think it's a good thing.
I think if they opened up these databases and were able to cross-reference DNA from a lot of cold cases, many of these unsolveds would be moved to the solved category.
Well, if you think about it, instead of just using CODIS or some of the other systems, closed systems just for law enforcement, just for people who got in trouble, you're opening it up to a bigger chunk of the population.
But I guess you get into civil rights issues. I'm sure the ACLU would be all over that. Is this a violation of people's civil liberties?
Well, I must say, I think that people should be able to choose when they...
Like when you take
when
the
you
DNA test, you
Yes.
should have an option of saying, I don't mind this going into a criminal database to help fight cold cases or something like that.
Yeah, I think that should be done, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think people should have the option.
Yeah, so nearly 50 years after this poor girl was found stabbed to death in a field, genetic genealogy has led to an arrest in the case. Barry Lee Welpley, 76, was arrested on Wednesday for the July 72 murder of 15-year-old Julie Ann Hanson in Naperville, Illinois, the Naperville Police Department said.
So this is like a 50-year cold case.
50 years. The son of a bitch thought he got away with it. and he's a retired welder living in Minnesota now, and he has been taken into custody for 3 first-degree murder charges because, according to the prosecution, they have 3 theories of how the murder went down. That's why he's charged with 3 counts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's 76. He is in custody. There's going to be an extradition hearing, and
Your old ass is going down, sir.
he looks like an asshole too. He looks like a shitbird,
Okay.
an old shitbird.
An old shitbird.
He looks like there's meanness in his eyes.
An elderly shitbird.
Yeah, so he is
Isn't
going.
that amazing? They say eyes are the window to the soul, and it's true. I feel like when you look at some of these serial killers, convicted murderers, they do have a meanness in their eyes.
This
Like,
is
you
a-
can see it.
Yeah, this is a 76-year-old man, and you might glance and be like, "Oh, that's just an old man," but you can see his eyes are very mean, and that he could be up to no good if he wasn't old as hell now.
Okay.
So maybe he'll spend his last days in jail.
Did you tell me like 126 cold cases have been solved because of the DNA and the genealogy databases?
Oh, since they got the Golden State Killer, there's been more than 150.
150.
Yes, and I don't know that for a fact, but I would like to think most of those are old cold cases.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I think that's just another tool that law enforcement can use to catch some of these killers who got away.
Well, thank you for sharing that information with us today, Dylan.
Yes, and thank you, Jenny, on our Discord chat.
Yeah, she's the one that linked you up with that article.
Yes, it's a very good article, and everyone there at the Discord, we love you.
Well, speaking of cold cases today, Dylan, our true crime story for this week happens to be a cold case. And we don't often discuss cold cases on Mountain Murders. We like resolution. We talk about a lot of cold cases on Patreon. But I thought this was a case. It was very interesting. It was one I had not heard before, and I'm going to assume most of our listeners have not heard of this case either. So I wanted to bring some attention to it. Are you ready?
You go ahead and drag it across my face.
Okay.
Yeah.
Malakia Kia, as she's known, Zally Logan, was born on August 1st, 1979, to parents Richard and Bernetta Taylor Logan. Her father was the mayor of Saluda, a small town in South Carolina, and her mother was a school teacher at the local middle school. Kia was born with 2 holes in her heart, which led to some illness during infancy. Kia was a 3rd grade student at Marywood Elementary School. She lived with her mother and sister Renee in an apartment complex known as Georgetown Apartments, just north of the rural city of Greenwood, South Carolina. Greenwood is home to Lander University with a population of around 23,000. It is located about an hour south of Greenville, South Carolina, and about an hour north of Augusta, Georgia. Some folks call the area of Greenwood the Lakelands due to several recreational lakes prime for fishing and many hiking trails with diverse terrain. By all accounts, Greenwood is a decent place to live and raise children. It was on May 15th of 1988 that Kia and her older sister Renee were playing outside at their apartment complex's basketball courts. Dusk was beginning to fall, so Kia decided to head on back to her apartment, and this was around 8:15 p.m. She hopped on her bike to make the trip a few hundred yards away. It was only about 20 or 30 minutes later that Renee headed home as well. The apartment building had a basketball court, swimming pool, and a park area with grills, a perfect place for families to hang out during the warm weather months. Many neighborhood children would play at the complex, usually under the watchful eye of neighbors. It seemed like the kind of place where everyone watched out for the kids.
Yeah, and those can be fun places to live at. Everyone, if your eyes aren't always on your kids, that your neighbors are looking out for them too.
A lot of families, it was a real family-oriented kind of neighborhood. So when Renee arrives home, Kia had not shown up yet. So she and her mother took a look around the building. They stumble across Kia's bicycle near the apartment's office. However, there was no sign of Kia. Bernetta searched the perimeter of the buildings, then called the sheriff's department. Now, initially, the case was investigated as a missing persons report. The only evidence turned up during the search was Kia's bicycle. A deputy named Dennis Beauford, who took the call, ended up staying overnight at the apartment with Bernetta in case someone called in with a ransom or the child showed back up. But no calls were made, and that's when the investigation really kicked off. Beauford told a local newspaper, "It was a pretty Sunday afternoon. When I drove up and looked at the bike in the parking lot, I had a gut feeling something wasn't right, and I called Riley at home." Riley was a major at the Greenwood Sheriff's Office. Kia was 4'2" and weighed between 60 and 80 pounds. She was a small girl who was wearing yellow shorts and a yellow and white polka dot shirt and slip-on shoes the evening she had disappeared. The following morning, searchers made up of volunteers and law enforcement. There were about 75 people in total, gathered around the apartment complex to conduct grid-like searches of the area. A helicopter was also dispatched by SLED, which is like the South Carolina law enforcement department, like some big state agency, I guess.
Right, like their SBI or something like that.
And so the helicopter was flying around, but after several days, the search was suspended because they just weren't coming up with anything. On May 18th, the sheriff's office issued a public statement regarding two men who'd been seen at the apartment complex. One was an older white man in a blue van, and the second, was a man in his mid-30s, a white man, who had a pockmarked face. And he was said to be driving a dark-colored Monte Carlo, probably like a mid to late 70s model vehicle. Let's go ahead and pause for a moment, Dylan, take a break, and we'll be right back. And we are back.
Hey.
Hey.
I've always been here.
So one of the most intriguing and promising leads in this investigation came on that Wednesday night, May the 18th, when a composite sketch of a potential suspect was aired on the evening news. The sketch came from a witness who had seen this second person of interest, the man who had been driving this mid-70s model Monte Carlo. He was described as being somewhere between 35 and 40 years old with a slender, pointed facial features. His height was listed somewhere between maybe 5'8" and 5'9", and was of slight build, probably somewhere maybe around 150 pounds. His hair was dark blonde, which could vary anywhere between blonde and dark brown. The witness had described his hair as having a light glow to it, but they couldn't definitively say it was blonde. However, one of the most interesting notes on this sketch came from a description which noted that the suspect had a pockmarked face. Area businesses raised around $20,000 for a reward fund in solving the case of bringing Kia home. For over a year and a half, the Logan family had little answers in their daughter's missing person case. The atmosphere at the Georgetown apartments changed dramatically over the course of days. The property manager, a woman named Caroline Kelly, lived in the building with her daughter and granddaughter, and her granddaughter had actually been playing with Kia and Renee on the day of Kia's disappearance at the basketball courts.
Oh, my.
She said that once this family-friendly setting changed, it seemed like a depression had set in. No longer were kids seen playing outside and running around, but parents were keeping their children inside.
Well, and you can't blame them. They had this kind of idyllic setup. Everyone felt safe. And then this girl goes missing. They don't have any answers. The person or persons who took her have not been arrested and brought to justice. So you can't blame them. And it sounds like those are the witnesses got pretty good looks at these two guys. It sounds like some pretty good descriptions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so they have a pretty strong composite sketches of the guys and a full mobilization of area resources to search for her immediately. And you find nothing. So that's very scary.
Though leads poured in initially, they began to dry up after a few weeks. Bernetta was greatly affected, as most parents would be, by her missing daughter. She refused to leave the apartment, waiting by the phone in case information came in regarding Kia. When Bernetta sat down for an interview with a newspaper, she clutched a photograph of her daughter and told the reporter, "I hope wherever she is, she's safe and alive and she'll be home soon. Part of me is missing, and I need to find it."
Gosh, I just feel so bad for parents of missing children. Parents of missing loved ones, period, but especially your child.
No, reading that, it made me tear up a little bit.
Well, yeah, because you don't, you can say, you can have a kind of put up a brave face about it, but you've got to be thinking, I would be thinking of all these 50 different horrible things that could be happening to your child, or you just have no idea where they are, if they're alive, if they're dead. And I just don't know how you could keep on.
Well, the article's publication had a profound effect on the community. A retired pediatrician by the name of Casper Wiggins wrote a very heartfelt editorial in the Index Journal. The letter inspired many to pledge support to the reward fund. A local Kmart's employees were so moved by the article that they raised $650 within an hour.
Wow.
2 months into the investigation, one thing was clear. Kia Logan might have been missing, but the community certainly had not forgotten this bright-eyed girl with a pretty smile. By September, Kia had been missing for 4 months. Investigators were tracking down clues as far away as California. Slowly, members of the community began allowing their children back outside to play. Deputy Beaufort, who had been the first on the scene, said, "Every time I open up the evidence room, I see the bike and it's haunted me. It's a reminder of unfinished business." It was not until October of 1990 that a deer hunter in Newberry, South Carolina, was walking along a pasture fence on Mount Pleasant Road. He came across a child's skull. It was located on U.S. forest property. Newberry is about 35 miles west of Greenwood, so it was quite a distance from where Kia went missing. A 3-week search of the area yielded little else as far as skeletal remains. A forensic anthropologist at the University of South Carolina determined the skull belonged to a 6 to 8-year-old African-American female, but even with dental records, it was an inconclusive ID for Kia.
Oh, really? So they just found the skull, basically.
Just the skull, and they knew it belonged to a little girl, but it was so badly decomposed. I mean, even with the dental records, they didn't know for sure it was Kia. Little could be determined about the cause of death because there were no obvious signs of trauma or bullet holes. But again, they only have the skull. The sheriff's department and investigators determined the skull had been intentionally left there and had not been dug up from a grave or anything like that. In 1993, the skull was sent to the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. for further testing. It was in 1996 that a private DNA testing firm used mitochondrial DNA to examine the skull. They took samples from both Richard and Bernetta, and using the DNA technology, it was found to belong to Kia. FBI lab also confirmed as well in 1998 that this was in fact Kia's skull.
Yeah, once mitochondrial DNA became possible, and I'm sure I'm not going to be real scientific on, before that, they get a DNA sample. It had to be, what is it? It had to be almost like a perfect sample. The mitochondrial are on the outside of, I know I'm screwing this up, but anyway, it led to a lot of leaps forward in many cases when they had this minuscule amount of DNA evidence in things. So it was a big leap forward in forensics.
Yeah, it definitely was.
DNA.
And what's interesting here about Kia's case is that over the course of several years, they used different forms of DNA testing on the skull until they were finally able to confirm it was her DNA. But it took several years with all of the different advancements in technology, and they kept going back and retesting every time there would be some advancement in DNA technology.
Yeah, and I think that's really good on these investigators' parts to kind of turn this evidence back in or get it retested with these new advancements in forensics, because that's answered a lot of questions over the years.
Yeah, so law enforcement concluded she was likely killed in Greenwood, then disposed of in Newberry. So for over a decade, Kia's parents had suffered. But finally, this helped give them answers to what had happened to their child. They had to accept she was dead. Her parents had prepared for the worst, but anticipated that Kia might return home someday. So now they would have to begin the mourning process like all over again. Because it went from like the not knowing to now you know, and it's like an entirely different kind of grief.
Yeah, and I guess you are, even though you may think these bad things might be happening, you also have you're clinging to this little piece of hope that maybe they're okay or they'll come back one day, and now you have a definitive answer.
Deputy Beaufort said, I felt for a long time that the skull was hers, but I had hoped it wasn't. I had dreams that maybe she'd been in California or somewhere all this time. Between July and August of 1996, law enforcement began investigating a string of kidnappings and sexual assaults of African American children in Georgia and South Carolina. A similar suspect's description was given in the cases: a white man with a pockmarked face.
Oh, really?
52-year-old Charles Wade Hampton, a maintenance worker at a state park rest area in Georgia, it's known as the Hard Labor Creek State Park, became a prime suspect. He had been recently terminated due to his unexcused absences and tardiness. Now, as we know, many serial killers and predators have a difficult time holding down jobs. Hampton was born September 21st of 1952. As an adult, he stood about 5'8" and weighed only 132 pounds. He had green eyes, brown hair, a mustache, and a blotchy, pockmarked face made worse by some poison ivy exposure in adulthood. Early in questioning, he admitted that he changed his hair color often. His ex-girlfriends and a former wife admitted to helping him dye his hair in the periods around 1995 and 1996 when the sexual assaults were occurring. Now, at the time of his arrest, he owned a 1986 Dodge 600. He had a snake tattoo on his arm, which several of the abduction victims described that their assailant had either a snake or a dragon tattoo.
Oh, wow.
He willingly gave up blood and hair samples as well as DNA. A search of his home found nude photographs of children, children's underwear, and pornography. Investigators noted he gave information almost too willingly. He described in detail his sex life, which he admitted to having sex with both men and women. He told of his prior criminal history, which included a 1981 sexual assault of a 16-year-old girl, telling investigators it was seminal fluid that convicted him. Inside his van, investigators found random items that didn't really make much sense to them. He had rolls of toilet paper, a marriage license, like from his ex-wife. He had nude photographs of women, including pornography, and a magazine called Stroke Off Tales.
Oh, wow. I wonder what that magazine's about.
The children's underwear were sent off for forensic testing, but didn't seem to bring any more information about the crimes. He even confessed to several abductions and assaults on 3 different kids in North Georgia and said he killed one child out of state and buried the child on a friend's farm. However, DNA showed he had not been involved at all in the crimes. A search of the farm yielded nothing, and he knew no details of the crimes. So during the investigation, police drove him around to many of the abduction sites, and while he was able to share some information, he didn't know any of the minute details that the actual perpetrator would know, leading the police to believe he was making up this confession.
Wow. So he has some kind of issues, obviously, it seems like, but he's not the killer, at least not of these victims.
That they can tell.
That they can tell.
DNA testing from 6 sexual assaults were linked together and came from one suspect. However, it was not Hampton. If they wanted to try him for some crimes, they would need a smoking gun. It was all very confusing, kind of puzzle, which police tried to make sense of. They had reason to believe that Hampton was responsible for some truly terrible crimes, but they had no way of proving anything. In 1996, where he pled guilty to having drilled a hole in a woman's bathroom at this Georgia rest stop where he worked, he was actually sentenced to 5 years on this. And by the way, peeping Toms freak me out.
Oh, man, peeping Toms are the worst. It's so depraved. And so this is almost worse than not having a suspect, is having this guy and knowing that he's off, he's not okay. You know, he's likely done something horrible.
And they find these very disturbing pieces of evidence, but they don't necessarily lead to a crime.
Women's
children's underwear.
Yeah.
And they do have some nude photographs of children, which I guess could be considered child pornography.
Yeah, but you can't really nail this guy down to put him away. Well, at least they got that, a 5-year charge on the peeping Tom because they found that evidence.
Yeah, and I have this, looming thought every time I go in a public restroom that someone has a camera set up or that there's like a hole and there's like a peeping Tom watching me, and it really freaks me out, and I don't like using public restrooms.
Oh my God, dude. We watched that movie called The Rental, and they had like the whole
Yes.
house was wired with us for sound and video. So now I don't know what to do when we go to an Airbnb. What are we going to do? We're going to look for cameras, or are we just going to let it ride?
I guess I'm just going to let it ride. I mean, if some weirdo wants to watch me taking a poop, I guess they can.
Man, if this guy wants to watch me take a shower, he has got a really niche desire.
Baby.
I've got to tell you that. If he wants to watch all this right here get cleaned up in the shower, he is, it's probably hard for him to find the website.
It's thick boy summer.
Thick boys are back in.
I love the dad bod.
Mine's beyond dad bod.
You've got a dad bod plus like 60.
Yeah, mine's like a grandpa bod.
No, I wouldn't call it that. You're just a thick boy.
I'm just a lot of dad bod.
You're a lot of dad. I like it.
Yeah?
It's very squeezy.
Cool.
So this meant that the investigators had half a decade to try and piece together a case against this guy. However, this was also when he stopped cooperating with authorities and recanted all of his prior confessions. Upon being let out of prison, he was immediately rearrested for the 1995 abduction and rape of a 7-year-old victim from Richland County, South Carolina. And Richland County is like where Columbia is located, so it's a bigger city. So while he had previously confessed to the crime, he recanted, resulting in the rape charge being dropped due to a lack of evidence. In November of 2002, Hampton was transferred to a jail in Greenwood County and charged with murder, abduction, and intent to commit criminal sexual misconduct on a minor, all in relation to Kia's disappearance and murder.
Wow.
Now, according to investigators, they'd had a case against him since 2000, and he'd in fact been a suspect since 1996. However, they'd waited to pursue their case as they didn't want to risk activating an interstate agreement between Georgia and South Carolina, which would have required them to have brought Hampton to trial within 180 days of those charges being laid. Now, according to investigators, they had managed to uncover strong evidence linking Hampton to Kia's murder, including a version of events that included details only someone involved would have known, which was enough for a Greenwood County grand jury to indict him on the charges. Given the case they'd put together, they were prepared to pursue the death penalty. Hampton pleaded not guilty to the charges and immediately recanted his confession, just as he had done in the previous cases.
Well, then why say all this stuff if you're not going to stand by your own words? What an
I
asshole.
guess he had a taste of prison and didn't like it.
Well, that's possible, or he could be playing some kind of a game.
Well, there's that too. On June 22nd of 2007, the prosecutor announced that the charges against Hampton would be dropped, citing a lack of evidence to corroborate his prior confession. However, they did say they would pursue new charges should new evidence surface. Major Riley of the Sheriff's Department said there was no relationship between him and Kia. He did not live there. This was a random act, which seems to be his technique. Despite the charges being dropped in relation to Kia's murder, Hampton was convicted on obstruction of justice in relation to that Richland County case and his alleged false confessions. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison with credit for time served and good behavior. Oddly enough, after Hampton was arrested and went to prison, the sexual assaults and abductions of these children did stop.
Wow, so they're trying every way they can. They got a real strong feeling that this guy is a bad person. And they're like, oh, so you give false confessions and led an investigation this way and, took resources away from other things? Okay, we're going to hit you for obstruction, and you're going to get the maximum sentence for obstruction.
Good.
So
Get him
we're
on something.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing their best, and I'm sorry, I agree with what they're doing. I honestly do. Some people might be like, oh, they're picking on this guy, or that's too much. But I'm sorry, but I agree with them that this is a bad guy. This is a bad guy, and he needs to be kept off the streets.
Well, I think it's important to discuss Hampton as a prime suspect, not because there is definitive evidence that he is the person responsible for Kia's abduction and murder, but because of the damning evidence which came out of his own mouth about the criminal acts he's committed. It's been a decade since there were any new developments in Kia's case. It is safe to say this may likely be one of those cold cases that may never truly be solved. Police have long theorized that Kia's abduction and murder was a crime of opportunity. Perhaps Kia's case was a random child kidnapping that went wrong and ended up in murder. This often happens when a victim fights back or tries to run away from their perpetrator. Kia's case is similar to that of a 9-year-old from Georgia, a girl named Tiffany Nelson. She went missing on June of 1994, while she was riding her bike close to home in a public setting. Tiffany's body was found in a shallow grave about 20 miles from where she had been taken. Kia's remains have never fully been recovered, so at this point, law enforcement is hoping to one day find the rest of her so that her family can lay her to rest. Kia's case was featured on a 1990 episode of Unsolved Mysteries. In 2009, the Kia Logan Memorial Scholarship was established at Lander University in her hometown of Greenwood. The scholarship allows education and nursing majors to receive the scholarship in times of hardship. So members of the community supported the Logan family when they were in need, and now those funds will support those in need with educational opportunities.
Well, that's nice. That's nice in her memory. But that's kind of similar. Those two cases seem rather similar. Two girls riding not that far from home on bikes.
Both African-American children.
Both African-American. And,
similar age.
The body's not...
Both 9 years old.
They just found her skull. They didn't find all her remains, Kia's. And this other girl's remains have never been found. So someone is doing something particular with the remains that makes them hard to find.
Well, and the fact that Tiffany Nelson was taken about 20 miles away and buried in a shallow grave, and then you've got Kia, she turns up, at least her skull does, 35 miles away from home. So obviously the kidnapper is taking these children, murdering them, and then driving them some distance from where they're taken to dispose of their bodies.
Yep.
So this has to be someone with a pretty decent knowledge of this Georgia, South Carolina area. And as I mentioned, Greenwood's only about an hour north of Augusta, so it's kind of like right there at the state line.
Yeah.
And this guy Hampton seems to have a pretty decent knowledge of this area. I mean, he's all the way up in Richland County committing crimes.
Yeah.
Which is about 3 hours away.
Damn, I just tell you, I just don't know. If I had the urge to harm a child, I would like kill myself. I would never act on it. I don't get it.
I don't understand it either. And like I said, this guy, I mean, we don't know for 100% sure that he's the guy who murdered Kia, but just based on his own admission, the guy's done some creepy shit somewhere along the line to kids, right?
I would have to say yes. I believe so.
And I just wonder what about it made him change his tune and recant these confessions.
Well, he may have found out that they people who harm children don't fare so well in jail.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, his charges got out and people's like, oh, yeah, we're going to fuck you up, dude.
So this episode is a little bit shorter than what we've been producing, but we are going to be out of town, so we're recording ahead of time. So hopefully you'll enjoy this case, and maybe it's something you've never heard of before. Maybe you'll start digging into Charles Wade Hampton, because he sounds like a shipbird.
Yeah, I think he definitely is that, and I think he's definitely a monster of some type. And it might sound wrong, but even if he didn't kill these poor girls, I think he needs to be off the street. So he may be out already after the time served and all.
Well, just based on the fact that he's obviously got nude photographs of children and
Right.
children's underwear in his possession, shows me that he's a fucking pervy creep.
So if there's any time the laws are going to be bent or evidence planted, I want it to be on someone like this, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this guy deserves to be in jail.
Yeah, I think he deserves to stay in jail.
I mean, he's obviously done some shady shit, and I think cops knew that. They just couldn't 100% prove what he had done. But they all seem to have a very strong feeling that he has done some really terrible things to children, including likely murdering some children.
Yeah, and if he got caught the obstruction charge with time served, he's probably out now.
Ew, and what kind of deviant, peeping Tom at a rest area where he works? I mean, that's
Jesus.
just fucking creepy.
That's just, I don't know. There's something about peeping that is so very creepy to me. And I think you can always count on it leading to, even worse, more depraved acts.
Well, yeah, because don't we know just from history that that's what like Ramirez and Bundy kind of started doing, was like just being peeping toms, and then it's like it evolves into other more serious and dangerous crimes.
It's not okay. It's not boys being boys. It's not dumb stuff kids do. Anyone who starts peeping, no matter the age they're doing it at, I think it's a very disturbing sign that something may be wrong with them.
No, it is. We totally had a neighbor who was what, 10?
10, 11.
And he was a total like little creep. Like, I've never disliked a child as much as I did not like this child.
I must say, I've never, I've had kids get on my nerves. Kids, I'm like, oh my God, when they show up, some little hellion's going to run around and act a fool. But I'm not going to say I hated this kid, but I strongly disliked this child. Did not like being around him.
He gave me the heebie-jeebies. He was a little boy.
Yes.
I would be working outside, and he would just pop up, like, literally out of nowhere, like, from behind a bush or something, and be like, hey, Heather.
Yeah.
And I would be like, ah.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was constantly being watched by this kid.
Yep.
And we caught him peeping into our house multiple times, peeping into our child's window. And one time, didn't you like round the corner and he had his face pressed up against the front door, and you had like just gotten out of the shower and you were like, oh my God.
Yeah. And if he come in the house with his mom, he would disappear and he'd be like in your bedroom going through your drawers and shit.
Yeah, he'd be like going through my underwear drawer.
Yeah, total freak. And I'm sorry, it was just a kid, but he obviously is probably going to grow up and have some significant issues.
We have talked about this kid and we're like, he is dangerous. We're going to like keep an eye out in the newspaper, because I feel like one day we're going to see this kid like being busted for some extremely deviant behavior.
I'm telling you.
Because it was not normal the way this child, he would climb up on things to peep in in our daughter's window.
Yes.
And like watch her.
Yes, a total little creep.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Super creepy.
Glad we're not around that kid anymore. Because I put my hands on that damn kid. I'm sorry.
That kid was something else.
Damn, I don't want to beat a kid up, dude.
That kid gave me like total Ted Bundy vibes, and he was like 10.
Yes.
And I kept thinking, like, this child will break in my house and murder me or something.
Well, and you'd hear all the stories of the trouble he would get in school and around other people, and the things he would say to girls.
He told some other little girl in his class, I'm going to rape you. And he was like in the 4th grade.
Who does that?
And then, of course, his parents were like, there's nothing wrong with him. He's a good boy. Like, completely in denial about their kid and the fact that he's like a little psycho.
Which is even more likely to him to grow, instead of getting him help that he needs, obviously.
That kid needed some serious therapy.
Yeah, he certainly didn't need to be enabled. So fuck those people.
No.
Yeah.
But man, a peeping Tom, that just freaks me out.
Dude, it's going to be like a new Netflix docuseries, Raising a Serial Killer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, we do have video equipment. Maybe we should make our own documentary about it.
Maybe so. So we hope you enjoyed this.
This has been the case of Malikia or Kia Logan. I will post some photos of Kia along with pictures of the suspect, Charles Wade Hampton or whatever, on Instagram, so you can check him out. Make sure to sign up at patreon.com. We have a lot of bonus content there. You can support the podcast, get ad-free episodes, and join our Discord chat because we have a lot of fun.
We do, and it's growing every day, and we love the new people and the people that's been there for a while. We get to know you. It's like we're friends.
And you can always drop us an email if you want, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the show. If you have a case recommendation, maybe a suggestion, something you would like us to cover, we are always open to hearing of some maybe interesting cases from your area, maybe something we haven't heard before. We'll be back on Wednesday with another Offbeat. Thanks for tuning in.